All right, y'all, welcome to the show. Let's have some fun today. So we're going to start with an Israel-Palestine debate, Piers Morgan versus Owen Jones, and Piers gets obliterated. Then we'll go to Chris Christie snaps and yells at a Newsmax host to his face. That's fun, and that's vintage Chris Christie. Then we'll get to the new comments from Nikki Haley. I mean, she's portrayed as the moderate Republican option, but as you're about to see, she's as extreme gets. And then later on in the show, I know what you're all looking forward to, Trump talking about golden showers. And Joe Manchin also sucks himself off and yet again floats the idea that he might run for president, even though he has roughly negative 48 supporters in the entire country. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it here. Everybody do me a big favor. Please click the subscribe button. By the way, a lot of the segments that we've been doing on Israel-Palestine, the ones that are like the hard news segments where I give you all of the updates, a lot of those have been getting demonetized instantly. So if you like the show and you support what we're doing here, you can support on Patreon or tip by through YouTube. There's a thanks button below. And that really means the world to me for all you who do support us. Remember, I've never had a conversation with an advertiser. I'm really, really proud of that fact. I'm one of the few in this business that has never and will never talk to an advertiser. So you guys help build this show from the ground up with like $2 donations and $5 donations. So anyway, much love to all of you. And again, also, please click the sub button. It helps out massively and the algorithm will cost you nothing. Okay, let's dive into it here. So look, I want to give credit to Piers Morgan in a weird way here because he's been having so many Israel-Palestine debates on his show. And he's one of the few outlets that's actually willing to listen to both sides. I mean, most of the time, certainly in mainstream media, you're getting a very biased perspective, a very pro-Israel perspective. Every now and then you get, a good segment around the edges that usually we talk about and we'll cover those. But most of the time, it's wall-to-wall rank propaganda in favor of the Israeli government because that's the perspective of the U.S. and Western governments. And so you get this really biased coverage, and it's hard to put lipstick on this pig now, given just how many innocent civilians Israel is slaughtering. But again, Piers, to his credit, has been having these Israel-Palestine debates since the beginning of the conflict, and he's heard out more pro-Palestine voices than maybe anybody else, certainly anybody who's been affiliated with mainstream media. But here he has on, I think the guy's name is Owen Jones, and man, this dude runs circles around Piers, and Piers also walks into a trap. It's the Russia-Ukraine trap, where the frailty of his position is exposed. So let's watch and we'll break it down.
In my estimation, they are qualitatively different. What Hamas is publicly what it's doing is genocide. What Israel's doing is not genocide.
There's a difference between what Israel, you could say both Israel and Hamas have engaged in genocidal and murderous rhetoric.
No.
And I'll give you an example.
No,
they have.
No, you can't.
Benjamin Netanyahu. I can. Is it uncensored or not?
Yes. You can say
Let me quote what the Israeli authorities have said. Benjamin Netanyahu, when he quoted Amalek, the scriptures, what does Amalek say? He quotes Amalek when they attacked the Israelites. And what God told the Israelites to do was to destroy kill every man, woman, child, and livestock. If I would put it to you, an Islamist leader was quoting a similarly genocidal passage from the Quran, you would not, I would say, hesitate. We haven't. You've had a lot. I'm going to respond just quickly. Israeli officials said that Gaza will end up being a city of tents with no building standing. That they are attacking for damage, not for accuracy. The agricultural minister, Avi Dikti, he said we are rolling out a new Nakba. A Nakba is the mass expulsion, 700,000 Palestinians in 1948. This is why hundreds of genocide scholars, people who are actually, unlike you and I, experts in the field of genocide studies, fear that a genocide is taking place. So the difference between Israel and Hamas is Hamas does not have the capacity to wipe out Israel. Israel is wiping Gaza off the map.
So let's just say right off the bat here, checkmate. Like, this is like strike one, you're out. Like, ain't no 2 or 3 here, son. He just leveled him. The idea that the Israeli government and top Israeli officials are not using genocidal rhetoric is absolutely preposterous. We've seen it time and time and time again. We've covered it time and time and time again. But Piers tries to make the argument that a lot of people make, which is, hey, if Israel puts down their weapons, then they'd be wiped off the map. If Palestinians put down their weapons, they'd have a state tomorrow. This is like the propaganda that's put out there. The fact of the matter is that's not even close to true. Like, I don't know what more Israel would have to do in order to prove genocidal intent, or at the very least ethnic cleansing aspirations. Like, I get people say, well, they have nuclear weapons, they could nuke them. By the way, they floated doing that. Top Israeli politicians floated doing that. But, by the way, why wouldn't they do that? Because that would affect them. You can't nuke your neighbor. That would have disastrous health effects for you. So they're doing, like, almost everything short of that, and you still have people say, nope, I don't see it. I think they're much more moral than Hamas is. All right, well, let's continue. This gets worse for Piers.
Well, could, if they wanted to, kill everyone in Gaza. They decided not to do that.
Is your definition,
so genocide is...
They literally are annexing at least half of Gaza right now. And they've killed over 15,000 civilians in the process, over 7,000 children in the process. They've displaced like 1.6 million people. They're stealing, at the very least, the northern half of Gaza. They're trying to steal the whole thing. They're trying to expel Gazans out into the Sinai Desert through the Egypt border and set up a tent city there. They're trying to take the whole thing. But Piers' point is basically, well, if they really wanted to do it, they could just murder all 2.3 million of them, and they haven't done 2.3 million. So, there. Oh my God. Oh, that's the dumbest point I've ever heard in my life.
Want to kill everyone.
Sorry. Your definition of genocide, because in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin hasn't killed every last Ukrainian. That's simply not happened. No, he hasn't. And nor has he stated his intention to do so. And nor, as brutal and barbaric...
Vladimir Putin, absolutely, by illegally invading a sovereign country and indiscriminately bombing anything in front of him.
Indiscriminately bombing.
So I think Owen Jones is about to lay it on him here, where it's a wrap for Piers in this discussion. I mean, it already is, but it's about to get even worse. That Piers Morgan is perfectly comfortable saying Putin is engaged in genocidal violence, but he's uncomfortable saying that about Israel. Well, Israel in this short time span has far surpassed the brutality of Russia. So how can you say in that instance it's genocidal, but in the instance of Israel it's not genocidal? You literally just can't make that argument. It's just a massive contradiction in his logic.
Form of genocide.
Wow. Indiscriminate bombing.
He just said it's a form of genocide, that Putin's is a form of genocide. Well, Israel's is worse quantitatively. Actually, qualitatively as well, if you're willing to be serious about it.
Absolutely, by illegally invading a sovereign country and indiscriminately bombing anything in front of him.
Indiscriminately bombing.
Is waging a form of genocide.
Wow. Indiscriminate bombing.
Putin is waging a form of genocide, but he's uncomfortable saying that about Israel. Jesus, Piers. Talk about a blind spot.
Gaza. More than 2 Hiroshima bombs worth have been dropped on East London in the space of 5 weeks.
Okay, let me ask you two
questions. No, you said Ukraine. No, I'm going to have to put this to you.
Okay.
15,000 people have now been killed now by the Israelis, estimate, in Gaza. 1 in every 200 people in Gaza have now been killed. If you were to adjust for population in Ukraine, that would be 300,000 Ukrainian civilians.
Oh, Piers, you walked right into a trap, dog. Holy shit.
There's been a terrible death toll. It's estimated by the UN 10,000 civilians have been killed since February last year. In the space of 5 weeks, a country with a much, much smaller population has had a death toll higher officially than that in Ukraine. So can it be that you call that genocide, but when you have nearly half the entire civilian death toll of the Bosnian War in a country which is twice the size in terms of population, why isn't that genocide, Piers?
Oh, Jesus. Look, my guess is, I watched the whole thing a few days ago. I don't remember his reaction, but what people usually do in this instance is they fall back on intentions. And that's what Piers has done in these conversations. He said, like, look, it's collateral damage. Israel doesn't want to kill these civilians. They just happen to be killing these civilians. And again, if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. It's comical at this point to believe that. The low number is 74% civilians killed. The high number is about 94, 95% civilians killed. Right now, according to Euromed Monitor, it's over 7,000 children who have been killed. It's just, that's not an oopsie. That's not an oopsie. To the IDF, if they think we can get one Hamas member and kill 80 civilians along with them in a hospital, in a school, at a marketplace, in an apartment building, they press the button. Because the fact of the matter is, they don't really care or consider Palestinian civilians in any way, shape, or form. Many of them have said that. Many of them have said, I don't buy this notion that there's innocent Palestinians there. We say they all voted for Hamas. They all support Hamas, so guilty enough. That's how they view it. So ironically, they use the exact same logic as Hamas. When Hamas doesn't differentiate between the IDF or an illegal settler and a woman and a child, right? Or you know, a male who's not engaged in any sort of illegal violence or, you know, stealing any land or anything like that. Hamas doesn't differentiate, and so it's fair to say that's genocidal. And the IDF does the exact same thing. The exact same thing. You're all guilty enough. Hamas would say, you know, you're all occupiers, no matter where you are, even if you're in, you know, within what the partition plan was, right? They'd still say, nope, you're an occupier, you're guilty enough, and they would kill. And the IDF is doing the same thing when talking about Palestinians. That there is no such thing as an innocent civilian there. But he doesn't. He's got this notion he can't shake. That is, we are the good guys. The U.S., Britain, Israel, we're the good guys. We're trying our best. Our intent is positive. Anytime we get civilians, it's just an oopsie. It's just collateral damage. And so therefore, it is different. Look, I will grant him this. If that was the case, if it was just collateral damage, and say 5% of the dead were civilians or 10%, then that would be qualitatively different than what Hamas is doing. But that's actually not the case. They're doing it on purpose. And in fact, their goal, I think, rather explicitly right now, is ethnic cleansing and taking all of Gaza. There's a video that's gone viral that shows somebody tweets like, oh, Gaza's in the midst of getting an upgrade. And you see all the rubble in northern Gaza. And it's an Israeli tank driving through. And you see everywhere you look, Israeli flags. So in other words, yeah, we bombed the shit out of North Gaza. We expelled the population. And now we're planting the flags to say, we're going to rebuild here. This is going to be ours. Tell me how that's just an oopsie. Tell me how that's just collateral damage. It's not. The fact of the matter is, they want the land, and they want to ethnically cleanse Palestinians, and they're in the midst of it. And so, like, again, I don't know what else would have to be done for somebody like Piers to agree. It might literally be they would have to drop a nuke on all Gazans. And even then, maybe they say, oh, well, you know, hey, in the West Bank, they haven't nuked the West Bank, where the Palestinians are, mixed in with the settlers, so is it really genocidal? By the way, at the end of the day, Owen Jones killed it in this debate, but I don't even care what language you use, right? If you say, hey, the term genocide is too charged, and it invokes the idea of the Nazi Holocaust against the Jews, where they're shoved into gas chambers by the millions. If you say, it's too charged, so I can't go with that, I get it. That's fine. But if you soften the language from genocide, what does it become? Ethnic cleansing. Now, you still might say, well, I think that's too charged as well. I'm not sure that's exactly what's going on here. Well, I disagree, but okay, I'll grant you that too. But even if you soften the language as much as possible, we're left with this. Israel is killing massive numbers of innocent Palestinian civilians every single day. That's just a fact. There's no softening that one or lightening that one. It is what it is. And then again, these people would fall back on, well, but I don't think it's on purpose. So that we just disagree. And I think the evidence is empirically on our side, saying that they are doing it on purpose. But look, I mean, that comparison to Russia is devastating, man. There's no way for Piers to wiggle his way out of that. It's just not possible. And I'll end on this. I think this is obvious, but apparently in today's world, it needs to be said. The bottom line is, any sort of offensive violence and any sort of targeting civilians on purpose, I don't care who does it. It is always bad and wrong. It is always evil. That is always terrorism. Whether it's the U.S. doing it, or Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda doing it, or ISIS doing it, or Hamas doing it, or the IDF doing it, or Russia doing it, etc. That's always, always, always bad, wrong, terrible, evil, etc. So, anyway, credit to Piers for continuing to have these debates, but this one clearly did not go very well for him. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.